Welcome to Employee Relations Words of Wisdom, your source for all things human resources and employee and labor relations. Hi, my name is Bob Carroll. I'm the Executive Vice President at Permanent Solutions Labor Consultants and your host for today's episode of Employee Relations Words of Wisdom. Before I get started, let me remind you, hit the subscribe button right here. Hit the little bell. The subscribe button obviously means you are subscribing to our channel. The bell means that we can push our notifications to you. You do not have to come hunting for us. You will be notified when there is fresh content for you to view. And our mission on Employee Relations Words of Wisdom is to bridge the gap between employers and employees. At Permanent Solutions, we believe in working in a union-free work environment. And that means that we have a lot of work to do in getting employees and employers to see eye to eye and work together. And that's exactly what we do. And for all you union people out there who may see this, this is not a bad thing. You may be union, but we believe in you as well, too, as employees. We just hope that you have a good connection and a good relationship with your supervisors as well. But, that's everything to us. We don't hate the union. We just hate the concept of having a third party interfering between the ability for management and employees to work together symbiotically to create amazing solutions in the workplace. And one of the problems that we see here is overtime, and overtime is a absolute killer if it is not approached right. Yes, it can be an amazing solution because it's something that you have in your arsenal as a leader in a company where you can, for a short period, pay your employees a little bit more money to solve a problem, especially when times are like they are right now. We are in a great economy. People are spending money. People are buying your goods. If you're in a position where you have to, fulfill an order that just came in, and you have to make your employees work overtime for a few weeks, what do? Do you make it mandatory? Do you make it voluntary? Those are your two choices, or you fall flat on your behind because you don't do anything. So you got to look at the overtime option, right? So let's look at the voluntary overtime, because there's a couple of nuances in voluntary overtime that can get you in trouble if you fail to do it right. Now, you have voluntary overtime, which means that your employees have the ability to voluntarily sign up for overtime. But how do you pick those employees to work? Do you pick them based on seniority? Do you pick them based on their performance? Or do you do a first come, first serve basis? And you got to be real careful with each and every one of those, because let's look at seniority. If you're doing seniority, are you truly getting your best workers? If you're paying time and a half or more, depending on what you have set up at your organization for your employees on overtime, you're paying that amount of money. Is your most senior people going to produce the best results? And you have to take a look, and there's not no right or wrong answer here, because everybody has their own DNA in their company. But, you have to be very careful here. If your top employees, top producing employees are your most senior employees, then by all means, that's the way to go. They have the experience, they got the knowledge, they can whip things out and get it done, and often they have solutions. But I hate to say it, guys and girls out there that are watching this episode, it is not always the case. In fact, a lot of times when we're on the jobs, the more senior employees are the ones that are already the more burned out, and they are going to take things for granted and not give you their best performance. It's not always true, but we see that quite a bit. Usually it's the younger, the new hires, the hustlers, the one that want to get out there and make a name for themselves, that come and produce, and they they provide the best service out there. And, but you got to look at your own DNA. I'm going to be very clear about this. Every company has its own DNA, so I can't give you a right or wrong answer based on a video without knowing you as a company. But there's the seniority way. Then there is the performance way. Now, this one is, to me, a very good way, because you are bringing in your top people to work the overtime to earn that time and a half or more. But you have to be careful because you can have a perception of favoritism, which leads to a lot of morale drops if you're not handling it right. So to do it by performance, you have to show and demonstrate to all your employees and make sure that the supervisors and employees alike know and understand what key performance indicators you're using to pick them to come in and work the overtime once they sign up. So remember, you're only picking from the people that sign up to work. So then from that list, you have to look at what they're how they're performing based on these key KPIs, the key performance indicators, and then you bring them in. Yes, it is more work on the supervisory end, but you're going to get better production. And if they don't produce while they're working the overtime, if they're coming in drunk or hungover or whatever it is, you have to take that in consideration and take action. That's why you have corrective action in the first place. But in my experience, the ones that perform during the week, they have the company's backs. They're they're working hard to show and make a name for themselves. Odds are they're going to perform for you. If you're doing a weekend shift or you're having them work later at night. And the thing is, you got to keep an eye on that. That's the big point I'm trying to make here. Just because they perform during the week doesn't mean that they're not going to go out on a Friday night and enjoy some of that work-life balance and that we promote so much and come in not physically up to their best. So you got to keep an eye on that when you use this method. And the last one is the first come, first serve, which is it's a smorgasbord. You don't know what you're going to get. You could get good employees. You could get bad employees. You're just picking from the top. Say you need 20 people. You pick the top 20 people on your list, put them out on the floor, and hope things get done. Now, there is absolutely no guarantee or even scientific approach to how that is going to work. You're guessing that they are going to do a job for you. I don't like that one at all, but people do it all the time. Again, you have to do what's best for your organization. Sometimes it does take somebody to look from the outside in, which is what we do, and we do a lot of work coming up with overtime systems for companies based on the culture and the talent that they have, because it is hard to see from the inside out, especially when you have supervisors that come up from the ground up and they have been part of that culture and they have no real vision of changing the culture. So now you have people in leadership roles that rose from the employee level who aren't going to see with the insight or foresight that someone from the outside can see. But I also want to talk about, that was voluntary overtime. I want to talk about the involuntary overtime, the mandatory overtime, the forced overtime. Now, this is the one that drives the employees absolutely crazy. They can take it for a couple of weeks. This isn't, if you have a situation where you have to do mandatory overtime for a few weeks, communicate it well with your employees why, okay? But make sure you set a clear expectation of when that mandatory overtime is supposed to end. Now, if it goes beyond a couple of weeks and they're working for months, or even some cases that we've been involved with, years on end, working 6 to 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day, we've seen people working 100 hours a week every week for 52 weeks. It's insane, but it happens out there. And if you're in manufacturing, if you're in healthcare, if you're in certain industries, this happens. And this is coming from my personal point of view and my experience being inside other people's facilities. This type of overtime has a severe negative impact on the business, and it actually costs a significant amount of money. to do mandatory overtime over an extended period of time. But there's a problem, and we get it. Before you get mad at me and say, well, you don't understand, I do. I know that there are times and places where you just can't get the talent. You can't get people in the door, or you're hiring people in the door that have not enough experience, or they're just not a fit for your company. You're bringing somebody in with a pulse, and that also is a morale killer. So are they really helping you by bringing them in? The answer is not necessarily. Sometimes it's better to wait it out and find just a handful of killer producers where 5 people can do the work of 20. Okay. And that's something that is doable. But when you're burning out an entire shift of employees, now mandatory overtime means everybody's working and everybody's, so maybe you're picking up a Saturday or you're picking up the entire weekend. You are going to burn them out to the point where, and this has scientifically been studied intensely, and this is what drove me to actually do this episode, is you can actually drive them to a point where they're more likely to drink, more likely to do drugs, more likely to start smoking, more likely to have personal hygiene bad habits, more likely to have inconsistency in the circadian clock, having their sleep schedule interrupted, more likely to pass away from serious medical conditions. Their likelihood of having heart problems or having a stroke rises. The likelihood of them having mental condition rises. This is something that is very serious. It's something that you have to pay attention to. How do you get around this? And how do you say, hey, we don't have a choice. We have to get them to work. And we know that this could potentially literally kill them. Well, give them a chance to bow out. And let me clarify what I'm saying here. That means communicating to your employees. That's a magic word again, communication. We use it all the time. Communicate that it could be an extended period of time where you're going to be forced to work, 6 to 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day, and let the employee have that choice to go and find work elsewhere. Hey, listen, at the end of the day, if one of your employees dies because you are forcing them to work too much, that's going to be on your conscience for the rest of your lives. Some people, I hate to say it, but they can live with it. Most people can't. Most employers that I deal with care about their employees, care about their welfare, care about their health, care about the production that they provide while they are punched in on the clock, and care about the consumer. So if you want to do the right thing, give them the opportunity to know this may be a long-term mandatory overtime situation. And, I speak about this because I've witnessed this. I've witnessed it too much. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one. And I've seen it for years. So what we got to do is we got to come together. And that's why I'm doing this episode right now. What I want you to do is leave me some comments down below. I want you to tell me what you do to alleviate the overtime problem. Listen, nobody wants to spend the time and a half. If you own a company, do you want to spend time and a half to pay your employees to work overtime? Absolutely not. If you're an employee and your employer offers time and a half to work overtime, do you want it to go away? Some do, some don't. It's crazy. But I have a lot of friends who work overtime and they live their lifestyles based on that overtime because it's always available. It's built into the DNA of a company. It's a tricky situation. And I'm going to do more episodes on overtime because I think as we break down all these things that I'm spewing right now, I think that we can break them down, look at some of the scientific studies, and come down to a solid set of principles where we can take overtime and control it in a way that's never been controlled before. And, a lot of people's jobs is to control the overtime. But are they doing it as efficiently as they can, where health and welfare and work-life balance is taken into account, as well as profitability of the company? Because remember, when I started this episode, I said what we want is employees and employers to work together to find solutions. So leave a comment down below. Leave it in LinkedIn. If you see this on Facebook, YouTube, on Tumblr, wherever you see it on social media, leave me a comment. If you don't feel comfortable sharing your practices in dealing with overtime or your feelings about it, at the very end of the video, you'll find my contact information. Send me an email. It's bcarroll, Carroll, at pslabor.com. And I'll be glad to talk to you about it. But all my contact information is at the end. So just remember, hit subscribe, hit like, hit the bell, and I'll see you next week on Employee Relations Words of Wisdom. Have an amazing week, folks.